he's like, listen, it's probably best that you just go. I'm sorry, but there's nothing else we can do for you. And I was like, all right. So I walked out crying, but I remember feeling in my heart, it's like, baseball. I'm like, no, I'm doing pretty good here. Baseball.
It's not necessarily that out of nowhere, God chose to give you this experience that was going to help to solidify your faith. It's the work that you put in to reaching out to God, to trying to meet him in the middle if you can. All right. Wealthy Kingdom Podcast, episode 4. We've got Blake Treinen on. Blake Treinen currently is an MLB pitcher for the Dodgers. He's been around to the Nationals, the A's, had some success, and I was fortunate enough to play with Blake back earlier in my minor league career. So thanks for being on, Blake. Looking forward to diving into what makes you tick and your faith.
Hey, not a problem, Blake. You honestly are like one of my closest teammates, and I think you know the rest of them. So yeah, it's an honor to be here, and it's cool to see what you're doing with the podcast and just how you've grown into a man of God over the years. So anything for that, I'm all in. So
yeah, man. Yeah, well, it's been awesome to watch you and see how. You had a really mature outlook to begin with back when we met back in 2011, I think. Gave a brief introduction. You know, you're a baseball player. You're an unreal pitcher.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. And you've grown through hard work. And I watched it firsthand. When I look back, I see how, you know every version of me now. You saw me before. I really was devoted to the walk, and you see me now with my family and the fruits of that. And before, we were great friends, of course, but a part of me always felt like, wow, Blake's really bold. Like Treinen's really bold to just be like, you didn't really care about being the cool guy. And I can tell you that in my life, the people that have really shown their love for Christ the most and lived it always have that impression on people where it's like, wow, they're really like, they're not trying to be cool. They are just doing the thing that they know is right. And a lot of the times, other people will poke at that or, make fun of you like, oh yeah, you're not going out with the guys to have a beer after the game every day, or maybe you're not sharing in the gossip in the locker room, but small things over time prove out and bears fruit. So when you listen and you try to be obedient to what God has for you, it says right there in the scripture, like the world isn't going to accept you. The world's not going to be excited about you doing the right thing, the thing that you feel called to do. But you've done that consistently. So I want to just give you some credit for that. And yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. You want to start a little bit with the way that your career started? Because I know you didn't play ball the first couple of years of college, right?
Yeah.
I want to go way back.
Off of what you said.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for that. I didn't feel like I was very bold, honestly. I just knew that I didn't always fit in, even dating back to high school. I was never a popular kid. I never knew how to like fit in or even have just like conversations that weren't tagged as like, wow, you really said that. That sounds really stupid. Mm-hmm. Like I was just so green on everything. I remember the first experience of pro ball outside of the AZL, I watched you and Bowman throw. And I'm like, all right, this guy's a surefire big leaguer. He's throwing 100 and just punching out the world. Like, those are my goals. Like, I've got to like emulate what these guys are doing or find something for myself. But you're right. Like, I have witnessed every form of you, and I've witnessed every form of all my other teammates that I've played with over the years. And, it's enticing to want to socialize. Like, we're called to have relationships. And in college, I had a ton of great teammates, but I never really had a teammate. And I had a lot of Christian teammates, I believe, but we weren't necessarily living the Christian lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get back to this. I'm not trying to go off track here.
No, it's dead on.
And I look back and I kick myself because I allowed the college atmosphere and the people around me to pull me into something that I was craving, and that was a sense of acceptance and worth. But my worth wasn't wrapped in like who Christ calls me to be. You know, it was kind of found in the world, even though at night I would turn on Christian music and I'd lay in my bed and I know that what I was doing was wrong. And like I would fall asleep with K-Love on just to like soothe my spirit.
Yeah.
So when I got out of college, I praised God. I was like, thank you for getting me out of college without making a lifestyle choice or mistake that cost me what you have destined for my life. Because I went to South Dakota State, and I'll get on this in a second, literally to pursue baseball and have a degree if that didn't work. But baseball was what God had put on my heart. So when I got to the minor leagues, I'd already resolved in my heart that like I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't going to, and I had a couple beers from time to time, like at dinner, but I don't enjoy drinking.
Right.
You know, and, but I enjoyed meeting people and seeing what drives them and like, you know, what people were doing to be successful. And then we all discovered these little wooden wands, and we,
Papa Gil, shout out to Gil Patterson.
Yeah, Gil Patterson, the guy.
Stick drills. I still do them. Yeah. Anytime I pick something up that's remotely like a stick, I just start doing those.
It's the swizzle sticks, yeah. Yeah, but I remember the coolest thing about High with you guys in 2011 was the fact that we started leaning on each other outside of what, you know, minor league baseball could wrap you into. You know, we actually started doing Bible studies and encouraging each other. And that's when I first started seeing a growth in you. And, you know, maybe like the first couple, it was like, yeah, I'll be there. And you would come, and then like there'd be one that you weren't. And then like, you know, 2 homestands into it, you were at every single one. Like it was so, dude, I even was literally checked out sometimes. Like, I don't want to go to this. Like your faith takes work. It's like,
big time.
Just like anything you do, you have to put in practice. You have to put in the time and effort to be good at it. You know, there's no right or wrong way. It's just humble your heart to the Lord and try to honor him with everything you do. And something that resonates with me is I don't want to do anything for the glory of man. I just want to do it for God's glory. And I'm not perfect. Like we all taste a little success or taste a little bit of like, you know, kind of self gratification and glory coming from your peers. And you're like, that's kind of nice. And then you're like, wait, no, check that down, because that is not who God calls us. And that's Satan wants us to take all that glory for ourselves and deny it from the one who gave it to us, gave us the ability to bring glory to God. So I've certainly had my struggles over the years, especially when I've had, you know, peaks of success, even in the big leagues. But yeah, I certainly, I appreciate you saying that. I think I kind of gave up the idea of trying to please and live the worldly lifestyle as much as I could, because I saw how much it stressed me out and gave me anxiety living in the world. That's why people say being a Christian is boring and like all these rules that you have to abide by. Like, tell me any of those rules that aren't meant to bring you peace.
Right.
It's like living outside of the sanctity of marriage. As a guy, I mean, just put yourself in a situation where you're promiscuous.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you
how stressed
that was
would
a lot
you
of stress. Yes.
Like on a monthly basis, you would be stressed, right?
100%.
You don't want that. Or like talk about, I mean, there's diseases that you could catch there. I mean, you could have a life-changing instance of having a child, you know, you know, drinking, you can make poor choices because you're not in your right state of mind. Like all these things are warnings to help us have a better life.
Right.
So,
one thought right there is that it feels true that whether you're a believer or not, everyone has certain pain and insecurity that causes a need for, whether like for your situation, you craved acceptance and you craved, you know, just being welcomed into the social group socially. That's something that you had felt was lacking in your life. For some people, that leads them to doing the things that they know are wrong, but it's worth that payoff of, oh, now I can have that little reward that I've needed, whether it's sleeping around so your teammates think you're cool and so you feel valuable. That was something that I always had a hard time with, and it really distracted me from what life's all about. And now that I have a family and children, it's so apparent that what I thought of as a strict rule, how God would ask us or tell us, command us to not, basically not sleep with anyone before we're married, and not unless we are married to that person. So I used to think that was strict, like, oh, that's impossible to keep that, blah, blah. And then you look back and you realize, wow, there's so much pain and heartache that could have been saved if I had just trusted and had faith that there's a greater reason than this. Maybe I don't have to understand the reason. That was a big thing for me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't have to understand the reason, because I see that there's a future that I can't predict that may be better than the one that I could conceive myself. And for me, that's what I see with you and with Ryan Pineda and with a coach that I had, Andy Harper, some of the three of the most devoted to being the best they can be and being the best version of who God wants them to be, following the gospel, really. So it
doesn't always feel that way, but it is great to know, like, it's thank you, So, but
and you can be an example. You are. Yeah. I mean, you are. Look what you've been through just this year. And if you want to get into that, we could discuss the whole, what was it called? The Sisters of, I always call them the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, because I can't remember remember the name.
Perpetual indulgence. I don't even like saying it to get.
I know, me either. I know you don't want to give them a plug there, but the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Essentially,
anything for the chastising of the Christian faith,
Mm-hmm.
because the Christian faith is the only one that condemns certain lifestyles that are contradictory to what God has called us to walk in, which is, it's not true. I mean, there's other faiths out there that they don't even just hate the sin, they hate the person for it.
Right. And they actually physically persecute.
They murder and kill and imprison. But, when you see stuff like this and it comes against the Christian faith, it's just affirmation for us that our faith is right, because it talks about, people go out of their way. They don't just say, like, oh, the God of this and that. It's like, no, literally the God of the Bible, Jesus Christ. Fake news, not real. XYZ, fill it in whatever you want to do. And it's just like, all right, God, like, you're real. Like, thank you for these opportunities to just shout your name on a rooftop, because that's what we're here for. Like, to make our God known and to make his name magnified. And I think, touching lastly is culture tries to give us an identity of who we're supposed to be as men. And if there's any young men watching, culture has been trying to ingrain you from a young age, whether it's through movies, whether it's through music, whether it's through politics nowadays, propaganda, it can be anywhere, sports.
Yep.
Like, it's, how do you become a man? Well, a man is somebody who feeds their sexual desires, and that grades you out as being a bigger, better man. That's not how God tells us we're men. We're supposed to be brave and courageous and bold and defend the weak and stand up for, those who can't defend themselves, and help meet those with broken hearts,
and
love
serve.
And serve widows and the orphans. Like, take these people in and bless them as best as we can. And we're not perfect, but to have something in the front of your mind that is honoring and desirable to God, that's what we're called to do, is to be an extension of Christ's love on earth, so we can bring his kingdom to earth. So, but
100%.
We can certainly dive into this. We can certainly dive into, my journey.
But to what you were saying before, for young men that are watching, or men our age, I just turned 34. You're 35. We're by no means old and wise, but we've seen a thing or two, enough to see and show. I've lived a life where I was spinning my wheels for 10 years, basing my value on, just like you said, how much respect can I earn from my peers based on the worldly values.
Yeah.
In baseball, it's one thing, like, you perform a certain way and you get respect, but culture also dictates other pieces, like getting hammered, drinking 25 beers because people think you're cool because you can do that, or sleeping with a different girl every time you go out. A lot of the players and men that I've been around that I respect think all that stuff is valuable to do and to be. And you can spend your life spinning your wheels trying to prove something to yourself, maybe that you have worth, or trying to prove something to others that you have worth. And at the end of the day, when you really dive into what the Bible says, because I was a Christian for years before I actually dove into the Bible and what it says, and started listening to Bill Creasy and his Bible studies where he breaks down every verse of the Bible in detail. And part of what calls us to do that is, okay, let's do our part to try to meet God. I'll do my part, take the time that I have, maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning, and just try and reach out to meet God in the middle. And it took about a year of that. And one of the reasons I started that was TJ Walls and Bowman. We invited you to it. You couldn't do it because y'all were in the playoffs, but it was an Exodus program.
Yep.
You know, where like no warm showers for 3 months.
Oh, I did that for 2 years.
Yeah.
And, my brother-in-law got me on this thing that Andy Frisella did. It was like, I'll forget it. But anyways, yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Ice showers.
Yeah, I told you I just got a cold plunge delivered today to the house, right?
Yeah, you're all about the testosterone booster now.
Yeah, so we're going to be, and for the kids, it's going to be their new punishment. Yeah. All right, bud, you don't want to do your chores?
1 minute.
To the cold plunge.
No, Dad. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, so let's dive in a little bit. We'll touch on all of the interesting things that you've been through this year, but let's go all the way back to because I even am a little bit gray with your story before we met. So for everyone out there, like I said, Blake Treinen and I met in 2011 when he got drafted in the 7th round by the Oakland A's. I had been drafted in the 8th round a year prior. And you came out to Burlington, Iowa. That's where we met. Yep. And we were throwing partners and everything. The rest was history. But before you got drafted, speak to kind of your childhood and where you grew up and what role the gospel had in your childhood. And then the most interesting piece for me is going to be, you took time off. Like nobody does that. You took a year or two off. You didn't even play baseball in college for a bit.
Yeah.
To go from there to where you are now is pretty awesome. So let's hear all about that.
Yeah. God's plan for my life was pretty, I'll kind of preface it like this. I was not viewed as a very, I didn't have like a big name in a small town. I had a lot of things that were against me, and I truly believe God uses people. And again, why He chose me, I'll never be able to explain why, but I am grateful that He did, and that I get to live this life of like the journeys and the dreams and all this stuff. Like it's for everybody. That's what He wants for all of His children. Like, and everybody's desires and dreams are different, but He wants this for all of us. So. I'm not special. I don't stand out. I don't do anything different than any other Christian. It's not how hard you try. It's literally kind of having dumb luck and not dumb luck, just being naive to the fact that when you put the world and the pedestal that the world puts certain achievements on, when you make it that hard to achieve and you just like, well, that's not realistic. I can't do this. Like you're killing the miraculous that God has. Like realistic dreams or realism kills dreams. And yes. I will always say that you can't do that. You're from a small town, or you're not throwing 85 yet and you're junior in high school or senior in high school. You'll never get drafted. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know why God kept pulling me. So I'll start back when I grew up in a small town in Kansas. from first grade on through high school, I was in Osage City, Kansas.
Okay.
My dad was in the military, so before then we bounced around until he found a full-time position in the Guard unit in Topeka. And so shout out to all the veterans that'll hear this. Like, I'm very grateful for your service.
Yes.
In a world where people try to downplay what you guys do. I'd like to honor you. So my childhood was great. I had, friends, never thought anything different. And things started to change for me when I got into high school. When I got into high school, my sophomore year, I just started, how would I describe it? I played sports. I played baseball my freshman year. I was delayed in puberty. So all my classmates, everybody was jumping leaps and bounds athletically, their ability, everything. And so I tried to find something that I was decent at. And I had a friend, Brent Michaels, who we would just start hanging out. We would play John Madden football and kind of live in a fantasy world of playing video games. And, my parents always cooked healthy for me, but when I'd go to my friend's house, they came from a little bit, better money, and they would have Doritos and sodas and Ho-Hos and Twinkies and whatever. I mean, as a kid, you're like, oh, it's a free game, not realizing that it was killing me. Like, it literally kills you when you eat terrible. And I don't eat super clean now, but I eat a lot better. And my wife and I joke that we work out so that we can eat.
Yeah.
And but I ended up gaining a ton of weight. In fact, to the point where by that Christmas break, I was 5'6", 240, 242. And like, I remember seeing a specialist because of, my development as a man and a young man. And he saw my knuckles. He just happened to look at my knuckles and was like, they look dark. And, I kind of want to run a blood test on you. So they ran a blood test and a bone scan and everything else to try to make sense of what I was going through. And the bone scan came back that at the age of 13, I had the bone development of an 11-year-old. My sugars came back, and I was so high that I was at any given time could have gone full-blown type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
And then I had junior rheumatoid arthritis from my hips down.
Wow.
So I had a lot of things, and I just remember thinking to myself, I thought it was normal when you wake up and it hurt to walk upstairs. I just thought that that's what the mornings were. You got to get the aches out. Wow. My mom's like, it hurts you that bad to walk up? I was like, it just is what it is, I guess. And so they told me I had to get my sugar levels down. So, I went cold turkey. No pop, no bread, no fruit. Even certain fruits like you're not. I literally stopped eating a ton of stuff. And I got my sugar levels down, and the guy told me, he said, once you get your sugar levels down and you hit puberty and you start developing, you should get to a point where you don't have to worry about it as much. And so I started running to help burn calories, get the weight off me. Literally was just running the main drag by myself at night.
Wow.
Trying to, because I didn't want people to see me,
Right.
So I would run at night and I didn't want people to know who I was. Because I wasn't the most athletic kid, and then that would turn into, okay, well, now I'm running this pretty consistently. And then I started losing some weight. Summer rolls around, I go to San Diego to see my cousins. I get on a really healthy eating plan because Californians, one thing they do extremely well is they eat.
They're dialed into the health scene.
You gotta be able to take your shirt off at any given point.
Yeah. That's the culture. You're right.
On a Midwest diet,
Yep.
And so I'm grateful for that. They're super active. My cousins, Kathy and John, and their two daughters, Hannah and Samantha. And they're second parents and sisters to me and my brother. And so they would take me hiking up Cowles Mountain. We'd go to the beach, Mission Beach, La Jolla Shores, Coronado. It was great. Fully active all day. I came back after spending a month and a half out there, and my brother wasn't with me at that time. When I came back, he didn't even recognize me. He drove by the basketball courts to pick me up, and he's like, I don't see Blake, so he drove off.
Wow.
I was like, no, basketball courts. Well, I'd gone from 5'6" to like 5'11", and then down to like 190.
Wow.
So I lost like 50 pounds over the course from like February to probably July.
And this is your junior year of high school?
Sophomore summer. Yeah.
Sophomore summer. So
I didn't play baseball my sophomore year. I played golf because I just was not throwing hard. I wasn't, competing at a competitive level. So I just stopped. I told my dad it broke his heart. He's like, I'm not going to force you to play. I just hate you deciding not to play because you're getting bullied. Because of your weight, because of everything going. I didn't want to put up with it. So golf, I don't have to. None of the bullies played golf, so I just played golf and I had fun, and I wouldn't change that. But when I lost all my weight, I lost like 30 pounds just in a month of being active and eating right. So it wasn't like I was just starving myself. I ate healthy, controlled my portions, was active every single day, swimming, running, jogging, going to parks. And so my junior year, I came back and I decided to play baseball again, only because I was playing dodgeball. And I realized I was
killing people.
Kind of. Not really killing, but this is back when we had real non-woke, not afraid to
the real balls
people up. I don't ever condone. Oh no, dude! Some of them were like the size of softballs, so you could really zing these suckers.
And the sounds they make when they hit,
softballs, not like pro grade softballs, dude. And they had little rubber grooves on them.
Yeah.
So
just to take the skin off your face.
Oh yeah, just to peel the skin, just to toughen us up.
Yeah.
I just remember that was almost like vindication for me. It's like when I saw somebody getting picked on, I was like, all right, I'm going for the bully.
Yeah, big time. You became a champion for the people that were getting picked on.
But it's free game. It's dodgeball, right? So sometimes love hurts. I don't know. And I was like, man, it's coming out a little easier. I think I'm going to try to play again. So I played my junior, my senior year in high school. I wanted to play at K-State really bad. I'm a big Wildcat fan, and went and did a camp up there, and I was like maybe topping 84, 85. And I sent him an email saying, I'm from Kansas, I want to go to K-State to be an engineer, and would love to maybe just work out with the team and see if I make gains to benefit you guys the following years. Don't even be really on the squad, but just practice with the team as a manager, work out with the team, something. And
you're a senior in high school when you're writing this letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't really remember how it worked out, but apparently in a Kansas Net email, my mom got a response after I had committed elsewhere that they're like, oh yeah, sure, you can do this. I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
But it's all right. God had a better plan for me.
Yep.
So I ended up, my mom had a friend at work whose husband was a pitching coach at an NAIA school in Baldwin City called Baker University. And they brought me on a $2,500 grant scholarship.
Nice.
There's not a lot of scholarship money at the NAIA level. It was $25,000 a year to go there. Wow. And I had a real gut check. I didn't want to be in debt forever. So especially when the course of the season I was on the JV squad, and they'd let me suit up for varsity, but I was running the velo gun in the stands, and
wow,
I just wasn't developed. Even for there, I wasn't.
Even as a senior in high school, huh?
No, even as a freshman in college. So at this point,
I see. Now we're moving to the college squad.
College, I was not good enough to be on their varsity team at a high school. So I told my coach, Phil Hannon, amazing guy.
So you were not playing even on the varsity squad your freshman year in college, and that was at an NAIA school. So
yeah,
you spent most of the time in the stands holding the gun. I get it. I've been there. My freshman year, I didn't play much either in college, but it's pretty disheartening. And so from there, what were the next events?
So there was a guy there named Jared White who, as a freshman, played. He actually went to the University of Arkansas, and he was told he wasn't going to start over a senior. And he says that he was better than the senior. I'm sure it was really, really close. I think the skipper was trying to honor the senior.
Right.
So he transferred to Missouri State, and then there were some misunderstandings there, whether he was right or wrong. I don't know, but he ended up at Baker. And so I asked him, I said, what's it going to take for me to have a chance? Because I'm just going to transfer and go to Arkansas. And because it wasn't the pitching coach we had there, I'm sure there's always a learning curve, but it wasn't great for me. There was times that, he was playing flip with the seniors when I had a bullpen trying to get myself better. And I'm like, I'm wasting my time. Like, he clearly doesn't think much of me. So, when my head coach there was more of a pitching coach for me, I felt like it was probably just a situation where I just needed to kind of move on. And, I got my teammates there. I love my head coach. And I felt like it was time for me to move. So I was putting in all the work. I was doing like towel drills, like anything to make myself explosive in his garage the whole time. I would go over to his house and he'd be playing video games or watching a movie or hanging out with friends, and I'd be in his garage just like smacking a chair with a towel. And I'm like, it's kind of eyewash now, but I think it's like the Miyagi factor. It is.
Because I did the same thing.
If you're willing to put in a little bit of nonsense of like repetition, it's not nonsense. There's always something to it. And I think in a world that we live in today, people want instant gratification and we forget the process. And I've gone through that even at this point in my career. But,
yes. And a huge part of that is, and Jordan Peterson says it really well. He's saying when you're moving through life, you have to find the thing that you can do right now, that you would do right now, and do it. Just do that thing. And we all know what it is. That is the irony of it all, is we all know that thing. I could name 3 things right now that I should have done today. And this is one of the things that I'm glad to be doing, but it would have been easy to procrastinate this podcast too and push it back. I guess my point is those towel drills where you're just sitting there slapping the ground for 2 hours until your arm falls off. I've been there, and it's a frustration, but it's also a determination. Like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm determined. And if this is the thing that's going to make me better, and it's the only thing I know how to do, I'm going to do it. And sometimes it's not the technique that you're learning or the workout you're doing or the book you're reading, but it's the way that you're going about it. And if you're devoted, disciplining
yourself position. Yeah,
exactly. It might not have been the towel drill, but the way that you did the towel drill so persistently etched in your mind.
So from there, he told me, he's like, you might not be the most gifted guy when you're there, but you need to make sure you outwork everybody. And so when I went to University of Arkansas the following year, I showed up at my orientation, which is like a month before school starts. So they get you kind of like oriented to where your classes are, kind of like what a schedule would be, the campus, where everything.
And you're going into sophomore year now?
Yeah, sophomore year of college, which is 2007, 2008 year. And I talked to the secretary at the baseball field. They got like a full-on stadium. It's probably nicer than most or all minor league ballparks. Maybe not Vegas. Vegas is pretty, but it'd be like Vegas for college.
Wow.
So I mean, it's
sweet.
Kind of University of Arkansas is kind of a mecca. Van Horn kind of thing there. So my buddy told me, he's like, go in there, mention my name to Van Horn, and just tell him that like you want an opportunity to show him, like, just give me a year to show you that I'm worth being a Razorback. And I walk in and she goes, yeah, we do walk-on tryouts on this day. Come in, we'll schedule your time. I come back. I get a time and I show up on the time, and it might have been like August 20 something, or doesn't matter. I show up and I'm sitting there and she's like, yeah, let me wait for coach to show up. And I see Van Horn's office and his door's cracked. And then a grad assistant, a shorter guy with dark hair, not like super thin by any stretch, but he comes in and he's like, hey, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm just here for my walk-on tryout. I was told to come back this day at this time. And he's like, oh no, we don't do that. Just simple as that. I'm like,
wow.
The secretary literally told me to come back on this day. That's why I'm here. And he goes, listen, buddy, if we did a walk-on tryout, we'd have every kid
in the state of Arkansas. We'd be here for 3 straight weeks trying everybody out, and we don't have time for that. And I'm like, yeah, but if I can just talk to Mr. Van Horn, please. Like, we have a mutual friend. Like, I was told I need to talk to him. He goes, dude, he's out of town. Like, just spare yourself time. Like, kind of pushed me off. And I was
basically beat it.
I said, yeah, but, and like, as he said, Van Horn's out of town, like, he's sitting in his office. I was like, dude, like, I can see him right there. Like, he's not in Tennessee recruiting.
Wow.
Like, and he goes, he's like, listen, it's probably best that you just go. I'm sorry, but there's nothing else we can do for you. And I was like, all right. So I walked out crying, and I'm like, that's it, huh, God? That's literally the end of baseball. And I felt so like cool, I guess, whenever I went to Baker, because I was really a nobody in high school. I got bullied a lot. There was a moment where, somebody pushed me to my knees and told me to say I'm his, lesser peer, but in a more aggressive way. And I never understood where that comes from. But as I've gotten older, I understand that like we're all products of our environment, and you can't blame people for what they know and what they don't know. Like some people don't know how to handle certain situations. Like every day I'm probably challenged with a situation that I'm still learning to, especially as a dad and a husband. Like, right.
Well, and people are in pain. Bullies specifically, they're in horrible pain.
So they've been treated a certain way, and that's the only way they know how to treat other people. Now, I don't know for a fact what this kid's gone through, so I'm not going to say a picture. I won't even say his name, because he also is the first person that when I came back from Baker University, went out of his way and apologized and said he was out of line.
That is awesome.
So my brother went through it too. Like I said, our name just didn't carry a lot of weight in Osage City. My brother was a really good athlete, never had an opportunity because he didn't have a name. And, he might not have been the most X's and O's guy, but like he was a freak athlete, and he ran like an 11 flat 100. He'd run. Yeah, he's fast, man. Like
that is
knock someone's clock off in football. Like I've seen people who don't have a lot between the ears, but are freak athletes have incredible opportunities. And my brother's an intelligent guy. And he should have been given some more opportunities.
Right.
I offered him an opportunity at a small school after high school, but nonetheless, I digress. I go. So
you leave Van Horn's.
Yeah, I leave,
just
and
crushed.
I told God,
everything's over.
Car, my 99 Dodge Stratus. Fact. I had a 99
I drive a Dodge Stratus.
Like charcoal purple. It wasn't like the true deep purple that they had. It was like charcoal purple. It was a custom job.
That's great.
I swear. It was not. My parents blessed me with that, and it was an awesome car. And I remember walking out there, and I was talking to God. I said, okay, fine. I'm literally going to go to the weight room. I'm going to run every single day. I'm going to lift all the lifts I tell you not to do, because everybody's saying, don't do bench press. Don't do this. Don't do that. Like, right, whatever. Like, I've got to get bigger and stronger. And then baseball just kind of left my mind. I got into like intramural sports. I played basketball. I was like yamming on dudes in intramural basketball.
Yeah.
Felt really cool. Landscape architecture was an amazing gift. I met a lot of great people at Arkansas through that. Cool. And it's so demanding of your time that the people you're around are literally your family. And just awesome people, man.
And at that stage, you were a late bloomer. I can relate to that. I was a big time late bloomer. And it wasn't until about my junior year in college, maybe sophomore year, that I started realizing like, oh, wow, I'm starting to catch up. My body. And for you.
And if anybody's met you, I mean, you look like you came from Zeus's kingdom as child of a Greek god. And I mean, you've got like perfect white teeth. I'm just going to talk about.
but if you saw me when I was 18 or 19, you'd be like, who is this Gumby character?
Yeah. Pound for pound, one of the strongest guys I've ever met. So that'd be strange to me to
thanks,
see.
Brother. Thanks, brother. Do what I can.
But so I remember right around like Christmas break. It was like right before. I was like, hey, you guys want to go play catch? So I just went and played catch. And I never heard a voice. I never heard God's voice, but I remember feeling in my heart, it's like baseball. I'm like, no, I'm doing pretty good here. Baseball.
Wow.
No, I've gone down that road, God, and it didn't work out well. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah. It hurt.
So,
well, and real quick before you keep going, because this is a huge question that I get often from my friends, believers or not, how do you hear from God? So when you're praying on this, hey, God, what do you want me to do? Because we're all there right now in one way or another. What's my next step? What did you hear? Baseball? Did you feel baseball?
Feel it.
How did it come through for you?
Kind of like it's in your. If you can, there's times in your life when you can't. You say it's your heart. You feel like, but it's deeper than that. It's like it's your spirit. You know, spiritual beings in a physical body.
Right. You kind of know it, right?
Sometimes there's an undescribable peace about something that makes no sense to you.
Yeah.
And it made no sense why baseball became a passion again. I'm like, maybe that's just the kid in me wanting to play because I'm picking up a ball. Well, and I'll get into it more when it comes down to my decision to make a statement this year. But like, this is when being a little bit naive to how unrealistic it was to getting back into baseball.
Right.
I remember, and the attacks from the enemy were so strong in this moment in my life that I look back now and it was so apparent. I went home. I started doing pitching lessons with a guy who was drafted in the 7th round from the University of Kansas to the Miami Marlins. And he was $20 a lesson. And I said, hey, I just want to play ball again. Like, is there any opportunity out there? So I still didn't know if that was God's plan, but I felt like there was this burn to play baseball again.
And this is between your sophomore and junior year of college?
No, this is my sophomore winter. Like
sophomore winter. Okay. Before the spring. Okay.
Right around the first semester, I started having this desire again. It made no sense.
Okay.
I go home and I go and throw. This guy's coming to do lessons, right? So I throw into a tarp and I'm like, the term baseball players will get this. The ball throwing you versus you throwing the ball was never so apparent. I was trying so hard and it felt like it was just.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Worst feeling.
And 2 days later, I had to throw in front of this guy. And the first thing he said to me is he says, I don't see why, if you're going to college, why you shouldn't try to have it paid for. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I didn't have that opportunity anywhere else.
Right.
So what do you got? He's like, well, the only connections I have are University of Kansas, Fort Hays State, and South Dakota State. And I remember I went home and I was like, I cannot leave South Dakota State. I can't leave Arkansas unless it's a Division I opportunity and they have landscape architecture. Because my carnal mind, like God kind of is like, okay, I'll give you a little bit of that, like realistic security, but I also want you to kind of test me. And I remember hearing somebody preach about God's probably sick of us just saying, Lord, bless our food and give me a nice day and keep me. And it's like, why don't you guys challenge the creator of the universe? Like, hey, how about I have you luck into a car that you shouldn't have lucked into, or like bless you with finances so that you could send your kid to a private school, or hey, that cancer your mom's dealing with, why don't you pray for that so I can just reach into her life, rock her and heal her, and you can see a miracle. Yes, I'll bless your food, give you a great day, and X, Y, and Z. Like, that's easy. And those aren't things that you should shy away from because God wants us to talk to him little and small. But, like, test him, right? So I remember saying... Yeah,
have faith that it can be better than you can imagine.
Now, imagine this. This is the picture. I literally thought of this the other day because I was sharing my story with a teammate. And I said, it just hit me. Imagine somebody who never played a single game of varsity at an NAI level, transferred to the University of Arkansas, and then decides to say, God, I need a D1 opportunity.
Man, yeah.
Like, kind of.
I thought I was an underdog.
And then throw, like landscape architecture. So I go and do a couple more lessons. This guy says, hey, I need to get some velo readings, and I can send some stuff out and see what they say. And I had a curveball, which is gross. Apparently, I mean,
your curveball was disgusting. It was disgusting.
Well, I was a slider guy when I met you, but when I was there, I was throwing curveballs.
Yep.
And it was really good that day. And I'm like, that alone is going to help me get to some school. And I was topping out at 85. I said, can you make that like 87, 88?
And he goes,
what do I owe you?
he's like, yeah, because I think you'll get there pretty easily. And I said, thank you. Well, South Dakota State calls me. They say, yeah, we're interested, but since you're at a D1, we can only talk to you like once a month. So we'll shoot you an email on when we're able to give you a phone call.
Right.
And
so those are the NCAA rules for everyone else that's listening.
Yeah, because I played college baseball, went to D1, wouldn't have had to sit out at Arkansas, but since I was D1, transferring to potentially a D1, I would have to sit out. Well, the weird thing is, there was a guy in second year landscape architecture at Arkansas who had played at West Point for 2 years, then transferred to Arkansas. Yep, Army. There you go.
Yep.
He's like, Blake, are you sure this is what you want to do? Because you're pretty good at what you're doing right now in landscape. I'm not patting myself on the back. We had some really brilliant people, but like when it came to graphics, which first year was heavy graphics, like it's probably top 1 or 2 in my class in graphics.
Wow. And that's hand drawn, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
before we go, you have to show one of your pieces of art that you do.
I don't have any on me. I'll text it to you and you can maybe tab it up there at the end. But I remember the teachers were like, why are you trying to leave for South Dakota State for baseball? Look at what you're literally going to have a slam dunk nice job when you're done here. Like, what are you doing? We're like top 5 program in the country. You're top 2 in your class. Like, I remember them telling me this. In fact, 2 or 3 of them told me like, you're the top of your class.
Wow.
Which like struck me because I didn't think that. I mean, we've got so many gifted people, but the one thing that struck me is I didn't know if South Dakota State had a landscape architecture. And I was like, I can't make that decision and just chase baseball and set myself back 5 years.
Right.
So, shockingly enough, not only was there a D1 baseball player in landscape architecture second year, there was a girl from South Dakota State who was in a design build landscape architecture bachelor of science program at South Dakota State. So it's not a 5-year credit, it's a 4-year bachelor's program, right?
Wow.
And I was like, hey, what's the difference? She goes, if you just want to design high-end residential and some small corporate, like, it's a really good school. Like, when it comes to materials, like, they're really good. But, you know, I wanted a full spectrum accreditation, so she transferred to Arkansas. I was like, that's nuts. So she had played soccer at South Dakota State. The other guy was telling me how hard it was to be D1, let alone try to pursue it. And I was just like, guys, I don't know why I want to chase baseball. It's just I feel like God's telling me to.
Yeah.
Judy Brennan knew it. Judy Brennan was one of the top professors, like lead professors, head of it, like maybe the you call it like a dean of the school of like landscape college or something like that. She's a pretty big deal. Anyways, she's the only one that told me, she's like, if God's telling you to do this, you need to chase it.
Cool.
And I remember right when I had vocally committed to South Dakota State, I saw they were coming to Arkansas to play the Razorbacks. And I was like, all right, I get to see my buddies in action, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
They got throttled like 22-3 and like 18-1. And they're like, nice. You're leaving Arkansas for that?
Yeah.
Yep. Sure am. Because I prayed that awesome prayer, and shame on me when God comes through to not answer. And I ended up having to find a summer college team. And the only place I could find was the Van Johnson Bandits in Kansas City. And the funny thing is, I don't think Van Johnson has like all these players that have made the big leagues from their league, and they didn't even know that I was in the league. Like, wow. The lowest moment of my baseball career was in that league. I mean, it was like Hollywood, dramatic, rainfall, lightning, career over moment. Like, oh no. I was driving my dad's Chrysler 300, which was like a big deal for our family. Like, my dad, that was his dream car, saved up for it, got it, like smart, did it the right way. He was overseas. My car, my Dodge Stratus, spark plugs weren't having good connections, so I was just and I was working at Lowe's as a flower boy, watering flowers for a paycheck, and then driving to Kansas City for games every night. Wow. And my mom's like, yeah, go get your dad's car and just drive up there. So I get up there and we're playing in Park City or North Kansas City. Yeah, North Kansas City High School or something like that. And I was supposed to pitch, and I come into the game. Bases are loaded. There's one out. Mound visit. clouds are rolling in. We're trying to get through the inning because we're up by.
And you're in the pen now, warming up.
No, I'm on the mound.
You're already on the mound.
In, the pitching coach says, "Hey, we got bases loaded. Come back or two, you're going home." It's like, got it. I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Home. Gotcha, skipper. Ground ball. Let's go. And I'm looking around. I'm like, man, it's kind of nasty. Like Midwest storms are no joke. Like Burlington. Think about Burlington. How they just come rolling in.
Oh yeah. Dark clouds.
Yeah.
Tornado.
So that's what was
alley.
happening. It's like dusk, so you can kind of see him still. I end up getting the guy out. I think I strike him out. Now we have 2 outs. Next guy I face, ground ball to me. I get the ball. I'm going home. Got to go home. Ground ball to me. That's what's in my head. I look. I start firing. The catcher goes first.
Oh,
I'm like, what?
No.
So I threw it anyway.
You threw it home anyways.
Bro, and because it caught me off guard. I mean, this is just such a green move on my part. Like I throw it to the backstop. He picks it up, throws it into the outfield at second, trying to get the guy out at second. And then he scores. As this happens, lightning, thunder, torrential downpour. Everybody runs, and I'm on the mound like,
just please,
what just
strike
happened?
me now.
And I'm just like,
just strike me.
I'm like, I don't even care, Lord. I don't care. Soak me right now. And I'm just drenched, walking out, and I just get a text from my coach. He's like, "Don't hang your head, dude. Like,
cool.
These are all learning moments." And I couldn't even tell you his name anymore, but they were great people. I know one of them was Brugman. He actually played at West Point.
Okay.
Funny thing, he was a senior in high school going to go play at West Point, and his dad coached he partnered with MLB to coach in China. Brugman, I think, was his name. Yeah, but anyways, that was a low moment of my life. And my elbow started barking. I was like, "What's going on?"
And that's a big summer.
Yeah,
For
the
anyone
summer
listening,
ends, and I go to South Dakota State, and I go up there, and I'm like, "Hey, Richie," which is my head coach at the time, Richie Price. I said, "Hey, where do I meet you to sign? Let you know that I'm coming." And he's like, "You're a walk-on. You don't sign anything. You just show up." I was like, "Oh, all right. So this could be one week in, next week out kind of thing."
Yeah. No commitments.
And I didn't know that's how it worked. So I did my orientation up there, and then my dad and I went home, and I go up there and have a pretty good fall. I mean, I'm like 85, 88. Ended up getting a really nice compliment from my head coach. We had a lot of really talented arms. One of which is in the big leagues right now, Caleb Thielbar with the Twins.
Okay, yeah.
Another one was a freshman throwing 93, pitched in the big leagues for a couple innings, Lane Thompson. And, I mean, he pretty much laid it out, trying to challenge our guys. But, the fact, for me in that moment, it was a big compliment. He goes, "There's only one guy I would trust right now, and he can't even play this year."
Wow.
And I was like, "All right, cool." So that made me feel like I'd kind of earned the right to stay. And
yeah. And the coaches and the players and people don't understand what kind of weight one small confirmation like that can have in your life. Yeah. When you've been working your balls off desperately for years and years and years. For everyone listening, that the summer after your sophomore year in baseball is one of the most important times to be to go and play and be scouted by the pro teams. So pro scouts go out all summer and watch. Even your sophomore season in general, if you're a draft eligible junior. Yep. 100%. Specifically, though, I feel like in terms of the draft prospects and the Baseball America rankings, the summer is always a time where all of that shifts. They discover who's going to be who for the next year. So the fact that you had a tough summer your sophomore year, that's the summer where everyone's like, okay, if this person's going to be a big draft pick, this is when they're going to break out. Yeah. So that already puts you at a huge, I mean, this is a huge underdog story, even more than people might realize. So then you get to your junior year.
No, not even yet. Sorry.
Okay. No. You're good.
Oh yeah. So sorry. Yes. Junior year, first year at South Dakota State.
Yes. We have to sit out.
I have to sit out a year. I tell myself when I get there, all right, this is big boy baseball, even though it's South Dakota State. We had a really, really good team, but in my mind, again, like naive a little bit, I feel like everybody to D1 at least had a chance to get drafted.
Yeah.
I look back now and depending on your work ethic, yeah, I believe that's true. And I believe that anybody could get drafted if you put in the time and the effort. Because there's always going to be a skill that someone sees that you can hone in on. Is it defense? Is it speed? Is it bat to ball ability? Is it arm strength? Is it spinning the baseball? Is it, whatever? So I get to Christmas break and I go home, and my high school pitching coach, which was my head coach, was like, it doesn't look like you're trying to throw the ball hard. I want you to try to throw as hard as you can. Like, you'll be able to throw harder, I promise. So I'm just ripping as hard as I could. I go back 4 days later. I couldn't even lift my arm up. Oh. Like, my mechanics were so bad, I thought I tore something. And so we go and see a doctor in town, and he's like, oh, you got a slap tear.
Oh, no.
What? Like a slap tear. And what does that mean? And he goes, well, I was like, is that good, bad? He's like, that's about a 20% success rate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I was
That's
like,
what ended my career on the rotator.
Oh, really?
Or the
yeah, because you've got to go through a bunch of muscle. You got to disattach a bunch of muscle just to get to the tear.
Yep.
Well, my trainer, thank God, said, hey, we need images before we just go to the knife. And he's like, all right, whatever you think. So we get images, and it was just rotator cuff tendonitis.
Good.
And I was like, all right. So we crank out like rehab with my shoulder, and then come probably April, sometime mid-April, we had a canceled series against North Dakota. What are they? The Fighting Sioux, I think, is what they were, maybe, or now they're just the Sioux. Or, but we ended up inter-squatting, and I threw, and our offense was like second best in the country. Granted, we're really good hitters, not the best pitching in our division, even though we had two really good teams, Oral Roberts and Centenary, and then us. And I remember I was blowing fastballs by guys. I was like, what is that? I like it. I've never done this in my life. And my catcher gave me another compliment. He's like, can he play for us right now? And I was like, I wish I could. Because we had a lot of gifted arms. Our team was really gifted. But as understanding as an individual, like, to hear compliments when you have nothing to compete for was like the biggest boost of like morale. And when I got to South Dakota State, I told God, I said, I'm here to try to play big league baseball. Like, I'm here to get drafted. So to be on someone's list, my first year I need to be 88-91. Well, I checked that box in that outing. My second year I need to be 91 to 94. And by my third year I need to be 94-97. So that I have a chance to get drafted. Like, even if I fall short, like, I'm in that realm of being drafted. And that summer I go and play in Laramie, Wyoming. My first week I was there, or like maybe like my first couple weeks I was there, I end up like, we have to warm up all of our guys in the bullpen. I'm warming up this guy, Marco, and he throws a nasty changeup. Bounces under my glove, my hand's behind my back like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Through my legs, hits my thumb, which as a kid, this is another fun story. I actually cut my thumb off as a kid.
What?
So you can see the scar. You didn't know this, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, now that I remember you showing me in person, so I forgot about that.
All the way around my thumb, and like, I'll show you guys. It's so hard to find the camera. So see how kind of awkward it looks?
Yeah,
especially like right here. Like,
whoa.
Yeah, so I cut my thumb off when I was a kid, and apparently I probably broke scar tissue or redamaged a tendon in there, so I couldn't throw for a while, couldn't grip. Come back from that in the summer, throw a few more times, feel a pop in my finger, my middle finger. And I go see a specialist, and he's like, yeah, you ruptured a pulley. It's like a rock climbing injury.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how does that happen? So my mom was doing research, and there's the term power pitcher. I mean, everybody throws 100 now. But back in the day, no one was doing like grip strength stuff. Right. Like, your big thing was grip strength. I mean, I remember that. And
it helped. That's what a sinker is, right?
I guess. I don't have
to get your fingers very strong. I mean, that's the years that my sinker was really good. It was when I was rock climbing. And when I stopped rock climbing, my fastball started going back to more of a flat, flat pitch.
So ruptured it. And they said, you need to stop throwing. Can't do anything for 2 months, let it heal. And then, it should be fine. But if you rupture it because you're overexerting it, like, if you keep exerting it without the pulley holding all your tendons close to your bone, like, then you'll rupture that tendon. And that tendon will shoot in the palm of your hand. And we have 4 to 7 days to pull it out in surgery, or else it'll stay forever bent. And your finger would look like this the rest of your life.
Oh, man.
I'm like, all all right, I guess I'm shutting it down. So I literally threw nothing but changeups and long toss when I got to South Dakota State my senior year now, my fourth year of college. Man,
what a momentum killer.
Oh, dude, I'm like, God, like you literally pulled me out of Arkansas to have shoulder, thumb, and finger within a 6-month window. I'm like, you know, what's going on? And I get back and I'm long tossing with changeups. And I get to a point where we're doing the Fall World Series. I finally get to, which is like a competitive thing at a college where you draft 2 teams. Usually the seniors are the captains, and you compete in like a 5 or 7 game set. And I get to pitch in it. And I remember I was a little bit wild in my first inning, and my pitching coach came out and he's like, you haven't thrown a single pitch under 91. You've been like 1 to 4, like just throw strikes.
Nice.
All right. 1 to 4. There's my mark.
Yeah.
And now I remember going into, I was trying to earn a spot in the rotation at the time. And we went to Murray, Kentucky to play Murray State. And Friday guy went, 2 Saturday guys throw, because we went Friday, doubleheader Saturday, game on Sunday, right? And I threw the Sunday morning game as a trial to see if I would be the 4th starter. And it went really well. I mean, I went 6 innings, like 1 run, maybe 7 strikeouts.
Nice.
With pretty much a fastball. I mean, I had a breaking ball too, no changeup. So I just remember walking off, and Richie put his arm around me. He was like, hey, did that feel good? I said, yeah. He's like, you haven't thrown a ball in 4 years in a competitive realm. Like, we were just laughing. I was like, why? He goes, could you imagine that other team trying to figure out who the crap you were throwing 90, 95? Like on a Sunday when in our level, our best guys throw Friday, Saturday. Like, I said, well, thank you for the opportunity. This is pretty cool. I had the biggest smile on my face.
I bet. That's such a confirmation.
Yeah. So that year was good.
The bullying, the crap. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah. So that year ended up going well. I got a few letters from big league teams, finished the season 6-0 with like a 3 flat ERA maybe.
Yep.
And I go to Oral Roberts in our conference tournament, and I play against Oral Roberts, who's, you know, I mean, they just went to the College World Series this year. They're a perennial, you know,
they're always
powerhouse.
a top team.
And they're in the Summit League, you know. So I faced them, and I gave up like 12 runs in 3 innings. And I will take this to the grave, but it doesn't matter because it's part of my story. I was like painting corners, not intentionally, but I just was.
Yeah.
And the umpire was not giving me anything. So I'd be like 2-0, 3-1 on guys, and I just had to groove a heater so I'm not walking them. And it'd just be like double.
Yeah.
Bomb.
That's the story of my college career too. Ugh.
I was like, my coach came out and he got thrown out of the game. And I lost my cool. I threw a bat in the clubhouse. I'm pretty sure I put a hole in the ceiling. And it was my lowest moment of not controlling. Yeah. Actually, my lowest moment, I was on your team in Stockton. That was my lowest moment.
Oh man, which time was that?
High Desert. I finally had the best stuff of the year. Yeah,
High Desert's where we gave up like 19 homers in a 3-game series, something like that. Remember when the wind was blowing out and but our team hit like 17 homers too off of their pitching staff. It was just one of those days where if it was a pop up to second base, that thing's getting out.
Yes, I know.
Well. And I think you let the locker room have it.
No, I said something in the dugout, which is worse. I mean, I felt worse about, especially as a Christian, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways.
It's practice. It's a practice run so that you don't do that on ESPN now.
What was that?
It was a practice run so that you don't end up embarrassing yourself on ESPN now. Now you've been through it. You know what it feels like to do the right thing and the wrong thing.
Yeah. ESPN, Disney, probably not going to go on ESPN, but no. So anyways, I ended up, like, that national cross checkers there. I'm like, I'm not getting drafted. Like, I just blew it against Oral Roberts. Like, go and play for this team called Athletes in Action out in California, which ends up traveling to Alaska for the Alaska League and playing all the Alaska League teams.
Nice.
So the whole first week was talking about your testimony. And I'm like, I don't feel like I have a testimony. They're like, well, what's your life verse? I'm like, what's that? Like my whole life I've been a Christian, but I've never heard like testimony. I've heard testimony. No one ever explained it to me. And I'd never heard of a life verse. And so I'm listening people give their testimony, and it started around a life verse and like an instance in their life where like they had to lean on God. And I'm like, I just don't have that. And I told God at that time that if I was drafted in the top 20 rounds, I would sign. Like that's kind of my cutoff. I prayed about it. Was drafted the 23rd round. And I'm like,
by the Marlins, yeah.
I got to go. Like that's like, I'm doing it. Oh, okay. Well, God, I asked God like top 20 rounds, I'm leaving. Well, I didn't get it. So I went with my own choice. Fly down to Florida. They fly me first class. I'm getting free drinks on the flight, food. I'm like, this is awesome. This is big leagues, right?
Big league life,
my favorite pitcher growing up was Josh Johnson.
Yes.
For the Marlins. Yeah. Big thunder
stud.
Sinker slider guy. And I get there, I get to see the old school like teal and black pinstripe, you know, like the all white with the teal and black pinstripe. And like I'm getting chills. They have us do our physicals. We all show up that night back at the stadium. Guys are going and getting their gloves. At the time, I think they were fitting guys for gloves and getting them their first glove. I don't think not a lot of teams I've ever heard do that, but I think the Marlins were because guys were talking about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they pulled me and 2 other guys aside and said, hey, we're going to review your MRIs. We'll get back to you tomorrow. So I didn't sleep at all that night. Like, what the heck?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Again, if you look back, more doors are kind of like slamming in my face, you know, like come back in the next day and the guy in front of me didn't have a very great conversation. He came out pretty upset. And so it was my turn to walk in and the guy says, hey, have a seat. You know, like it'd be like Keith Lippman. It would be my guess. I can't remember the guy's title, but my guess is somebody who does that type of stuff would be a Keith Lippman, player
like
development.
Director of player development.
There you go.
Kind of
that'd be my guess. And this was 2010. So, I mean, I was a cheap sign. I was like 25 grand and then 1 year of college. That's all I was getting. And because I had 1 year left of eligibility and I had no agent, just was down there. And he says, we got good news and bad news. You know, what do you want first? I was like, just hit me with it because it's not going to matter. And goes the good news. So we reviewed your MRIs and everything looks good. There's no structural damage. Ligaments are great. Tissue looks great. Bad news is there's inflammation and our doctors view it as too much of a risk to want to sign you.
Oh, no.
Dude, I just threw 2 days ago and jumped on a plane across the country, San Jose to Miami. Like, what? What do you give me some ibuprofen? Scan me next week or something.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
exactly.
I got guys in here with, you know, Tommy John walking around with braces that they just signed and guys that were needing surgery. And I just got inflammation on my shoulder. So I walk out and I'm shot. Dude. I'm like, God, again, like you pulled me all the way through this. I'm so close. I'm like, I'm losing it. I'm trying not to cry in front of a bunch of men, you know, in a clubhouse. But like, I'm sobbing. You know? I go outside and I call my parents and they're like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I'm sure my parents are praying and also questioning what's going on. And I call my head coach at the time. He's like, did you have an agent? I said, no. He's like, how long you been there? And I was like, I don't know. This is like day 2. And he goes, don't worry about it. We'll call our compliance office and figure out what you have to do. And if you can play with us, we'll get it figured out. And I was like, okay. Because I was thinking I was going to have to go the Aaron Crow route and go like play independent ball, which is like not proven unless you're like a surefire first rounder at the time.
Right.
And then I called my chaplain from the Athletes in Action team. And I said, dude, this is what's going on. Like, I need something because I'm lost. I can't make sense of this. It's like every time I have success in this game, like the door shut in my face. Like, and I just don't know how much more I can take. And he goes, this might be, he's like, I don't know if you have a life verse or anything. He's like, but Proverbs 3:5-7 through 7 is what comes to mind is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understandings, but in all ways acknowledge God first and he'll set your path straight. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, God's got my back no matter what.
Right.
I'm not making a mockery of this, but in the moment I was so low that I'm like, yeah, God, I still believe in you. I do. But like, when are you going to help me in a moment where like I keep getting cut down? I wanted to play college baseball. You give me Baker. I have no success in Baker. I sit JV. So I leave, go to Arkansas. I was going to try to walk on. They say they don't do walk-ons.
I go back and you open up this door to go play at South Dakota State. And then I get hurt, and then I get healthy, and then I get hurt in summer ball, and then I get drafted, and now I'm released. And it's like, when does it end? And it made no sense to me. And so I get on a plane, I fly home. My parents pick me up at like 2 a.m. in Kansas City. We're driving back, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I'm telling them about the Marlins and then how I called my chaplain and I told him the Bible verse. And I kid you not, like split second after that, I look up, and the only car that had passed us was a red Cleveland Cavalier, red Chevy Cavalier, and on the license plate it said PROV 356.
No
and I just
way.
got goosebumps, and I cried. And my mom said, she just touched me on the shoulder and said, "See, he's probably with you more than you realize."
Wow.
And that was pretty cool. It was second time in my life that I felt like the tangible presence,
Yes.
whether it be through, something not like internal, but external. Like that's God's way of saying like he's with you. Like I had an internal moment as a freshman in high school. I went to a church camp in Tennessee, and they were playing a Christian song inside this. It was a big concert for all these high school kids inside the basketball arena at University of Tennessee. And this guy was throwing this massive painting on this, 10 foot by 8 foot canvas. And it's a worship song. I can't remember the lyrics or even the song, but by the time he's like slinging paint, you kind of understand what it is. He throws one last thing, and it's red, and you just see it dripping, and it talks about like the salvation that Jesus like gives you on the cross. And I'm like, and I just started shaking. I sat in my seat, and I was like sobbing. And I was embarrassed. I was like, what is happening to me? And I look back, and I'm like, that's just the weight of God's glory like fell on me. Whether it's the Holy Spirit, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have to ask God someday, like, what was that,
Yeah, right.
But that's the moment that I realized God was real, because at that point in my life, I was questioning who's to say Christianity is real versus Buddhism or Hinduism, the Jewish faith or Islam. I mean, you name it. Like, who's to say one's real and one's not?
Well, and that's where so many people. That's where so many people are right now. Even people maybe listening to the show.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that out of nowhere God chose to give you this experience that was going to help to solidify your faith, but it's the work that you put in to reaching out to God, to trying to meet him in the middle if you can. From my experience, because I've had 1 or 2 times in my life that were profound, inexplainably supernatural too, just like you're talking about. And, you sound like a kook if you try to explain this to people in a way that's scientific. There's nothing scientific about it. It's miraculous. And there's something that we, definitely something that we gain from trying to pursue a relationship with Christ. But it's not just going to come out of nowhere. You're not just going to be, living it up, doing your thing, and all of a sudden, boom. It takes trials, tribulations to break your character down. And you have to choose, am I going to run to the world with my pain, or am I going to run to God with my pain? And once you start doing the latter enough times, sometimes it feels fruitless. You're like, look, God, I've had, like your story, all of these things. Every time I'm just getting smashed by what seems like a terrible luck, terrible fortune. I feel like I don't have favor. I'm just working uphill, boom, smash, smash, smash. And what you realize looking back is, wow, I was not ready for all the things that, like, if I had gotten the opportunity then that God had for me, I would have blown it because I wasn't ready. And so I had to go through these things to get to a point where I was the kind of man that was ready for the task and the challenge that God has for me. So for anybody out there listening, I just wanted to say that, because some people are like, well, I'm just waiting for God to show himself, but
God's waiting on you.
Yeah. God's waiting on you.
God's waiting on you.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's one way wrong or the other. It's, God's not going to like punish us through this. He's not the one that does that. He's absolutely good in everything he does. What ends up happening is what, from my perspective, and I think perspective you can gain everything, is it's not that you weren't ready. And I think there is a point in time Blake, where we've had this conversation, Blake and Blake. That's so funny.
Yeah, I know.
There's a point in time where you can look back and say, yeah, I wasn't ready because I even physically, I wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. But there's times when I've physically been ready, but I haven't walked into that next step in life because what you're saying,
right? I'm
spiritually not ready. And he's a good father, and he does not want his children to walk into something where they're going to fail, and not just fail, little things like where, oh, you messed up. Like, let's get back on track. It's like failing to the point where you almost fall out of his grace.
Right. And where your soul's lost.
Yeah. He doesn't want you to go down this line where you toe eternal damnation because you're making choices where you feel like you can't come back from, and then you screw up some other blessings that God might have in front of you.
Well, and going back to the towel drills thing.
Yeah.
Those things that you aren't ready for, the reasons, those qualities about yourself that make you say, oh, I probably am not ready for this blessing because of this. We all have that awareness. And so what I've gained, and tell me if you relate to this, what I've gained a lot out of pursuing a relationship with Christ is the awareness of where I'm falling short, and the idea that
it's a tough conversation to have if you're willing to be completely honest where you're falling short.
It's very tough to look in the mirror.
Yep.
But we all know deep down, most of us don't want to face it. I don't want to face it for the most part.
Sometimes we don't know because, we gain wisdom from reading the word. And, that's when people try to discredit the Old Testament. They're like, oh, it's all about the red letters. And I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. But Jesus didn't come to abolish. He came to affirm, the red letter. Like, it's
all the same story.
Yeah. It's all. And so if you don't read the Old Testament, you'll never understand this sinful nature we live in with the old law that we would never, ever stack up to. We could never obtain it. And so you have to understand that when Jesus came, we're getting off a little bit here, but when Jesus came, he did away with all the animal sacrifices. He became the one true sacrifice, the Lamb of God, whose blood was shed.
Yep.
So that we could, So, but what I wanted to get back to is when I look back at all these doors slamming in my face, sometimes it's just the enemy trying to close you off and wear out the saints, if you will, so that you don't get to walk into the glory that God is trying to bring you into, right, to bless his name, to be a voice to the nations in whatever talent he's given you. His goal is to suppress God's voice, to change our image. And if God has a destiny for me, he certainly doesn't want me to walk in it. So there are times when he's going to try to come in, and when you feel like you're getting suppressed the most, understand on the backside of that suppression of the enemy, where they're holding you down, you're like, I'm getting no breakthrough. What's going on, God? It's like, God has such a big breakthrough on the backside where he's going to do something so amazing that's why you're getting attacked so much. 100%. And I can look back now in my career and I'm like, okay, now I get why Satan was trying to shut so many doors in my face. And you think in the book of Job, he's like, well, God, he only praises you because you've given him all these things. Let me take his stuff away. And he kept taking his stuff away. I'm not saying I'm Job. I'm not. But everybody has their own struggles. And the books in the Bible are for everybody. So we all have our own walks where things are pulling on us. And it's like, maybe it was something where the enemy was allowed to maybe test me a little bit and say, God, he's not going to praise you when I take this away or when I shut this door. He's like, well, try again. Let me try again. He's still not going to do it. And after a while, it's like, well, it's going to be kind of hard to keep pressing on Blake because he keeps pressing in on God. So, right. And that's through a lot of prayer. I have amazing grandparents who prayed. My mom and dad prayed. My cousins, just a lot of people praying for me, So, but yeah. So where were we at?
Well, you were just getting to where you got drafted by the Marlins, and they sent you packing because of the inflammation in your shoulder. So now you're going into your senior year. You didn't play summer ball because you expected to be drafted, probably, right? Did you play summer ball after that?
Yeah. So when I got back, that was like a short window. I mean, 2 weeks before, I was just in California going up to Alaska for the summer league. Well, the North Bats called, And my pitching coach was like, "Nah, he's not doing it." I'm like, "What do you mean I'm not doing it? I feel good. Like Northwoods League is like iconic. I want to go play Northwoods
big time."
And he's like, "No, you don't need to prove anything to us, Blake. Like you're going to be a starter." And the cool thing about this is what Satan intended for bad, God twisted for good. So my 5th year, I go back. I had to work all summer. I worked on our baseball field, leveled out the infield, mowed all the facilities at the university. And I earned like $1,500, right? Because I had to pay back like $1,200 of like 2 first-class tickets, 2 nights in a hotel room, right?
Wow.
So
you had to pay that back to the Marlins?
That's what was told to me. Like, in order to play, you're going to have to pay back what they give you.
That's messed up.
Well, it turned out that I didn't have to do that. And I was there for less than 48 hours without practicing. So I became eligible again to play.
Nice.
So that year, my head coach didn't have to do it as a 5th year senior. He could have just been like, "Yeah, well, Blake's coming anyways. Like I don't have to do anything." Gave me my first scholarship. Gave me 20%.
Wow.
All I could offer me. He's like, "I'd give you more, but like that's all I can give you." I was like, "That's fine. Like I didn't even expect that. Thank you."
Yeah,
my dad had a GI Bill from being in the military where you get your college paid for based on however many Title 10 days you have in the military. At war, I guess. So when the Iraqi war was going on, my dad had enough time that I got 80%. So I got 25% scholarship, and I got 80% from my dad. So I ended up getting a 5% kickback every month, which was like, $400, which was awesome.
That's big time in college. Big time.
Yes. Yeah.
That's everything.
And ended up getting put on the top 200 draft list. Got my degree. Had a great year. My velocity went up to like 97. Got drafted in the 7th round by the A's.
Yep.
And then that's when you and I met.
Yep.
In Burlington, Iowa.
In Burlington.
The season ended there. They called me up. Like I was gone. I was home for like 5 days without throwing. They said, "Hey, have you been throwing still?" And I was like, "Yeah."
That's right. They brought you out to...
They pulled me up to Stockton. I stayed with Dan Straley on the couch of his host
That's
family.
Right.
And that's when I got to meet
Strales.
Rob Gilliam for the first time.
Yes. Rob's getting married in September.
Oh, is he?
Yes.
Right.
I'm gonna see him next month.
Well, tell him hi for me.
I will.
He was my roommate in Harrisburg.
Yeah, he told me, dude, Rob loves you, man. Y'all had some good times.
He's the dude.
Some good talks.
Katie loved his perspective at that point in his life on
everything. Yeah, on everything. And I've had good chats with Rob about all of this faith and all these things. And it's just one of those things. Everybody's got their own perspective and their own hurdles, their own hurdles to clear.
And that's the beautiful thing about this life is God gives us free will.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not going to make people and say, "Yeah, you love me no matter what." That's empty. It's like you meeting your wife and she just has to love you, versus choosing to love you. Like that would suck.
Totally. It's not a fear. This isn't a fear-based life. And I think that's the kind of thing that for you to this point, your story, what it points back to is to your life verse, Proverbs 3:6. It's like trust in the things that you don't understand, essentially. Have faith.
Trusting God when there's things that you don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. Trusting God that the things that you don't understand are working for his best outcome. And when you feel that way, there's one thing to say it because and some people write it off as like, oh, it's just a psychological mechanism. It's a mindset, positivity and optimism that everything's going to be okay. But it's much more than that. It's more so it's a deep, deep knowing that all things are working toward good and that you are aligned with that. And you're, as a father with your children, praying over your children and just, there's nothing silly about it. And I used to feel like Christians were kind of silly. I used to be like, oh, I don't want to look silly. I don't want to be that guy that's like,
someone that never talks back to me.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest struggle that I even go through. I'm like, hey, one time, God, just hit me with I hear you, son. Just something. And I haven't gotten that. So,
but that's the car that drives by with the license plate where you're like, oh, yeah. Or the person that comes and gives you that confirmation. That's what I'm learning is that even though there are obviously the miraculous is possible.
He's the Alpha, the Omega. He's the ultimate. He's the creator himself. So like he finds ways to get to us. But
all things are God's work. Like all of the people that come into your life that give you what you need when you need it. I'm convinced that is all part of the body of Christ working together for each other. And it's given me a different connection to people, and to try and love people the way that God expects us to is not easy, especially strangers. Yeah. But that's, I think, one of the, I mean, for you and your bully story and the way that you were able to forgive your bully when you could have just gone back and pummeled him now that you're 6'5", 230.
I don't know if I'd still be able to do that. I mean, I got some like meat hooks for elbows, right? Like, I might get a little UFC on him. I don't know. He's a good dude.
102 mile an hour sinker.
I want that back. I've been praying, and I've got people praying. It's like, and I didn't bring this up to myself. I had people bring it up to me. They said, we're praying and believing that you're going to be better than you were before. And I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I've had some pretty awesome people. Business owner, all you listeners need to listen and go check out Saddleback Leather. That's a plug. Saddleback Leather Company in Texas. Man's on fire for Christ. Telling me the story about how he got started in the leather company. He was fasting for answers, and felt like he was supposed to start this company. He said, God, will you let me be the one to bring you the most glory out of anybody to make leather goods?
Wow.
And he's like, I can look back and say, you could throw that argument out there, is what he said. And he's like, but I don't want to just like say that and have it happen and look back, 100 years from now when I'm in heaven. I want to be able to like see it now. So
100%.
And he goes, Blake, my prayer for you is that you are now going to be the baseball player who brings the most glory to God from a reliever standpoint. He's like, you bring the most glory to God than any other reliever in the game. And that was hard. That was kind of hard to hear, but it made me choke up, because all of us, like, we just want to have a humble heart to like glorify our maker, our Father. And for someone to say that and give me that perspective, like, that was fresh, and it like made my spirit leap. And I just really want to find a way. Like, I don't know, it's performing is one way. Like that's my form of worship. That's like the gift he gave me. So, for you, like, your form of worship could be, these podcasts or the sphere of influence that you have, mm-hmm. like with your family, like it could be your profession. Anything. So, I think the talents, utilizing our talents is a form of worship.
100%. There's one of the most famous producers of all time, Rick Rubin. Have you heard of him?
No.
He's a music producer, and he's produced all of the biggest artists you could ever imagine. And he's world renowned for what he does. Even though he's relatively untrained and he's more of an artist, he's a curator of sound almost, where his opinion on things has proven out to be massively, wildly successful in the music industry. And what he said he learned is that in the context of listening to other people's criticism or opinion on what your craft is and what it should be, and how your profession of your art plays out, he said, once you realize that it's all of your work is an offering to God, that's when you realize the voices start to fade out, the voices of criticism, the insecurity of, oh, should I change this about the song? Or, oh, should I do this with my delivery? Or should I do that? Or should I listen to this? All the stress that you have about what you should be doing or what other people may think or their advice all melts away when you see it as an offering to God. And you know that if you stay true to that and you're giving that offering freely with your best, absolute best effort to make it glorify God as much as it can, that's going to be your best, period. So maybe 102 doesn't come back. Who knows? But is your intention of what you're doing out there even closer to God than it was before? And that's more successful. Whether it's 102 or 99, I mean, that's still pretty dang good. Where are you at right now?
I'll take 99.
Where are you at right now with rehab and stuff, just to hash it out? So just for context, we just went through your story to when you got drafted. Once you got drafted, you climbed to the minors with the A's. You got traded to the Nationals, made it to the bigs, had a great.
But yeah, I got to pick it up here now because there's still more.
Okay, cool.
It's all right.
I didn't want to bulldoze you. I just didn't want to leave that stuff out.
Big league version. No, it's good that we kind of interject and spend time talking about Jesus, because that's really kind of what this podcast is about, and like
exactly,
applying it to our lives. So when I was in DC, I was given an opportunity to be a closer in 2017. And I started out really well. Got my first 2 games of the season. I got saves against the Marlins. Third game of that series, I was told I was a hard down. Don't wear your spikes. Just go down there. Thank God I wore my spikes. They called me with 2 outs, guy on second base, up by 1 in the 9th. And I had to come in. I get a ground ball up the middle, run scores, face Yelich next. I ended up, I think, as a front hip sinker for a strikeout. But I was frustrated. Well, then proceeds to be this month of just ill fate. I had an analytics guy run some stuff, and he said, what did he tell me? He goes, based on your exit velo and your launching, well, you should have a high 2 or a low 3 ERA, but you have an 11. I'm like, this makes no sense to me. So then I proceed to fall into just mop up innings. People are asking for me to get sent down. Some people are saying, well, who do we have better in the minors? And I'm like, anybody can do 11, I feel like. So I'm like, not sure when this is happening. But my wife told me, she said, if God wants you in the big leagues, there ain't nothing man can do to keep you out of it. And that was never more apparent than in 2017. All-Star break rolls around. Let me backtrack real quick. When I was named closer, I told my wife, I said, hey, now there's a legitimate chance that I could earn the right to be an all-star, because closers are really the only people that get recognition out of the bullpen.
Right.
I said, but the all-star game's in Miami, and I just feel such a spiritual heaviness when I'm in Miami that I really don't want to be at the all-star game this year. I'd love to have a great year, but I don't want to be at the all-star game.
Right.
But next year it's in DC, Katie, 2018. Like, let's start praying now.
Let's do that.
Let's put in that sweat equity.
Yeah.
And so we were praying about it, and I'm getting traded to the A's. At that point, felt like career suicide. Like, not trying to be rude, because the A's were in a rebuild. And I get there and I met some amazing people, and the talent they had come up was incredible. And truth be told, like, that clubhouse, it's really like just the clubhouse, and then the front office like separates themselves. So like you're even closer within the group of players, like, because like they just keep it strictly business. There's not like a personal touch like some other organizations might have.
Yes,
that's their business the gladiators model. That's fine. I'm not a fan of it. I love the players. I love the coaches. Everybody that shared in that clubhouse was awesome. Like Bomel, Matt Williams, Bushy, Aldretti, Emo, players. They were awesome. Puddin. I don't know if you ever met Puddin.
Yeah, I did.
So,
legend.
Yeah, all those guys were great, man. Kotze, now he's there. So
that's right.
But I ended up getting an opportunity to close games there. They gave me a new vote of confidence and said, you're our guy. Go. We're going to have you throw in the 8th or the 9th. Ended up being the 9th. Met a strong Christian man, Santiago Casilla. And he was telling me some incredible stories of how the Lord revealed things to him in the middle of the run for the World Series with the Giants. He's like, God told me in spring training, physically, he's like, I heard it. He's like, you guys will win the World Series this year.
Wow.
He's like, I told only a couple people. And then when we got to the playoffs and we were facing the Royals and they got to Game 7, I gave a speech and I said, God told me in a dream we were winning the World Series. And he told me all these things. And he's like, man, that is nuts. So I kind of linked it. He could have written me off as like, this guy comes in and takes my closing job.
Right.
He tutored me. He was a great teammate and an awesome guy, always happy. Like he'd get frustrated, but then wash it out. He's good to go. The following year was probably my best statistic year of my career.
That's right.
And
lowest ERA of any relief pitcher with over like 20 innings.
There's guys that had better ERAs, but maybe not with like the 100 strikeouts. The thing that was interesting, it was like 1 of 1 with 100 strikeouts, 38 saves, and a .78 ERA.
Yeah.
Right?
And
ERA. 80 innings was the other thing.
Ridiculous.
So
that's ridiculous.
But I'm going to the All-Star game, and it was like God's way of like healing what was kind of scarred over. Because I felt like a reject to the Nats, like they were an incredible team, and I get traded away. They got pieces they needed. They won a World Series. But, man, I felt like a reject. And when I went back, it was like a healing I didn't realize it at the time.
Of course.
But in 2019, when I was going through my back injury, Katie sent me a picture of the All-Star bat signed by everybody. And she goes, I looked at this, and God kind of put on my heart. He goes, Blake has been faithful when it hasn't been easy. And I want to remind him that I'm a faithful God. And I brought him back to DC as a point of healing for where he was hurt. And, we're men, we know how to handle our jobs. We're not exempt from having feelings of hurt, like in rejection.
Right.
And
we're not immune to it.
There you go. That might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So yeah, when she sent that to me, I was like, okay. Cause during that struggle in DC, I never once was like really hanging my head. I was never like, woe is me. There were things I wasn't doing right. Don't get me wrong. Like I was walking some guys, I was pitching timid at times, but I was just like, man, I don't get it. The other stuff is just compounds, So then 19 happens. I don't do great. I don't do terrible, but then my back breaks in like late July. I pitch all of August with it. And then September, I go and get a MRI and it's like, yeah, you got a broken back. So I ended up sitting through September, didn't pitch in the playoff game.
A broken back from pitching.
Yeah. What's it called? Like a pars fracture or something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like these little flanges on the outside of you have your spine.
And then
on each side, you've got like little flanges that keep you from over rotating.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what broke. And, I was hurt in the middle of the season, missed like 10 days on the DL. It was only 10 days I'd ever been on the DL in my life up until this shoulder injury.
Wow.
And when I came back, Liam Hendricks had got the closer job, and they said, we're going to work you back into it. And then it never worked out that way, but Liam was electric. So like,
yeah, he's a stud too.
He's ended up being who he is now. So, so then they ended up non-tendering me, which I thought was strange. I thought they would at least try to trade me for somebody, but they didn't want to pay me what arbitration would calculate me out to making for a guy that they didn't know if he would recover from a broken back or, have close to a 5 ERA.
Right.
So ended up, this is God's faithfulness. I'm a free agent, and I've got the Yankees, the Giants, the Dodgers.
And I remember we talked, you came and visited in Arizona once, and we talked on the phone for like hours and hours right in this period. Right when you were kind of praying on it. You were like, hey, look, say a prayer for me because this thing with the Dodgers really seems like it's going to be great. And you said they've got a great Christian presence in their organization.
Yeah, they've got some good believers on the team. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting, but that's something that is hard to find and that you noticed. And part of why you probably have made a home there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I never wanted to play in LA. If you had to ask me, I don't want to play in LA. I don't want to play in New York. I don't want to play in Miami.
Yep.
Those are my three non-negotiables. Don't want to go there. And it's not because of anything with the organization. It's like the city. It's like
just the culture, right?
The traffic from a family perspective, when you don't get much time with your family to spend all that time on the road is really hard to think about. Miami's more of a spiritual heaviness. There's a lot of that in a lot of certain cities. But Miami and New York are probably the heaviest.
Yeah.
But New York had Eric Cressy, the guy that I trained with. And I was like, no, I could probably do that because I really do enjoy Eric a lot and he knows my body. LA, I remember praying for pros and cons about going there and not a single thing was a red flag, dude. And that's when it comes back to how do you know where God's directing you? Sometimes you just pursue peace. You bring up certain things and you let your spirit am I stressed about this or am I having peace about this?
Right.
And
it's a good way to discern.
Yeah. So I pursued the peace on it and I signed with LA and we ended up winning a World Series. And it was incredible.
That's right.
God, funny timing. He's like, yeah, the A's are going to reject you, but then you're going to sign for more in free agency than you would have ever garnered in arbitration.
With a powerhouse team.
Yeah, with a team that But the scary thing was, ready? There's always a little bit of risk. They told me, they said, we envision you facing the heart of the lineup every time you throw. I'm like, I'm on a 1-year deal off a broken back, facing the best hitters every single night. Okay, I'm either going to be a minor league contract with a big league invite the rest of my career, or I'm going to have a good 2-year deal or something, because this will be interesting. And I'm very grateful. Yeah, I'm very grateful that it worked out the way it did. They believed in me. They helped me get back mechanically where I needed to be. And yeah, that's what kind of makes this year really hard on me. You know, like some of my best years have been here in LA, and the fans are amazing. I've grown to love the city. You learn to deal with a lot of the stuff, you know, like when you're forced into an environment, you know, like the traffic is, every city has traffic, you know, like I truly do. I am grateful that I've signed in LA, and it's been a nice home. My wife and I have really enjoyed, you know, she would probably enjoy a setting where she doesn't have to travel so much that she can come to games without all the traffic afterwards. But we've been very grateful for, you know, Dave Roberts, Andrew Friedman, the ownership group. Everybody's been great with us. The only thing that really just hurts is them not defending the Christian faith this year. Man.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit for people who don't know the story.
Can. And, you know, I'm not going to bring up names or
no, anybody, of course not.
But there's probably things above them where they chose business over what I would call morals. And this is not a slight towards people. It's more a slight towards certain choices. And I am not ever going to sugarcoat anything when it deals with the integrity and respect towards Jesus Christ. And whether people care to hear my opinion or not, like, that's fine. This is a me and God thing where I'm like, how can I not give a vocal rebuke against something so foul that talks about the integrity being tainted and muddied, and like, you can't even think of a word, vile displays on the crucifix and somebody portraying Jesus, like the amount of anger that, like, and it's not like I want to go hurt somebody anger. It's like, how can you do that to somebody who literally gave their life for you to do that? And they just don't know. They've got such a strong anointing because there are people out there that are in this movement that are very, like, bold and boisterous. And it's like, it's almost like God has called them to be bold and boisterous for him, but the enemy has stolen their voice and is using it to defile God versus glorify and magnify God.
Right.
And I just,
they have a gift for it, for activism, but it's being misused.
Maybe they're evangelists. I don't know. I heard a preacher talk one time where he said God told him, like, people in the LGBTQ community, like, maybe they're evangelists, and like the enemy has stolen their identity. And like the culture, dude, you think it's a real thing. You start going in and it's just, you go in and you start confusing people's identity, and you start saying that we can do anything we want and give into every lustful desire we want. And it's like, think about life in general. Like, our bloodline is such a blessing and a gift from God.
Just to be here. Absolutely.
And when you start talking about these other things where it's man and man or woman and woman, there's no life after that. And life is a gift. And it's another thing you talk about in our culture where people just desensitize the right of life. Satan hates God so much that he wants to hurt him, and the closest thing to the image of God that's not tainted by the world are babies.
Yes.
Okay. And you've got some of these groups going out there saying, we're coming after your kids. Right? Sorry. Kids, get off. Because I won't tolerate that. I mean, you come in my sphere of influence and you start talking about hurting kids or defiling kids or grooming kids. I'm like, no chance. Because I'm going to live. My goal is to leave a standard. And I'm not saying people can't choose what they want to choose. My thing is, I don't think it's right when you ask people to affirm your choices.
Right. To force.
Right? Because what if I, as a Christian, come in and say, what if I came in and said, oh, it's hateful towards my faith that you're pushing this. Now you need to affirm what I believe.
Exactly.
I don't say that to people.
No, you would never force someone to say, Christ is Lord, like or else you're fired,
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
So my thing is like the argument that they make against Christians falls upon itself, because if the role was reversed, it would never fly.
Never.
Like you would never be able to say, I'm a Christian, now you affirm everything that I believe, or get canceled, or take these classes so that you're understanding how hurtful it is to me. Like the fruits of the spirits, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, right? Of these things, there is no law, okay? Those are things that just bless people. And I don't see how being a Christian, and now some people, we have skewed opinion, like skewed views of being a Christian, but and we put burdens of judgment on people. Guilty, been there, okay?
Yeah, of course, all of us.
One thing God's taught me over the last few years since COVID is people are not an inconvenience, they're an opportunity. And we don't war with flesh and blood. Even though we feel like we might be able to justify it, it's not right. There are principalities that war over our minds to dictate our decisions and influence our decisions. And those principalities would love nothing more than to confuse your identity, your sexuality, name it. Anything that taints the image of God. So when it came to the Dodgers decision, it was really frustrating because they chose it, and then I was told, oh, hey, we didn't vet this group very well, we're going to withdraw. And then they flip again and say, this is bigger than what you think, which I know what it is. It's ESG score, DEI, yes. CDI.
What's ESG stand for? It's the corporate. It's like the corporate tolerance
equity,
index. What's the acronym?
ESG, and then there's DEI, which is diversity, equity index, or something like that, or diversity inclusion index, or something. Anyways, that's something for viewers to look at. But the Dodgers told me, they said, this isn't about us and Jesus. It's like, this is strictly a business move. And that's when it struck me. And I'm like, God never loses. People might think they've gotten past the will of God, but at the end of the day, God will have justice, and you cannot mock God. And these people, the Dodgers have done such a great job. This is what's hard for me, is because I've watched them be so great at being in the forefront of just defending people's liberties and persecutions, and like just honoring people who are trying to fight for
a cause.
There you go. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And there's been some really cool things that we've gone through as teammates, like in the Dodgers organization. And all I was asking for was like, man, can we just have, the team, which there's a lot of players who felt very strongly about this, but without going into too much detail to respect the situation, like some things were encouraged to not. So, and players, you put them in a tough situation. Like they just want to play the game, right? And you don't sign a contract to be involved in political propaganda.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so like that was tough. And I'm like, guys, like I'm on the DL. I have no problem. Like I've got resolve in my heart to stand in this. Like, so I just made my statement, and I struggled. This is another thing too that might help viewers, is I struggled, like, is a statement really going to make a difference? And Katie and I, we remember watching the NBA, and we really appreciated one of the players, Jonathan Isaacs. And so she's like, he made a stance and made a statement.
Yeah, I remember that in a press conference, right?
Made all the difference for us as a believer to take a stance and not fall into what culture's telling you have to do. You can stand for a cause, but you don't have to agree with everything culture's telling you how you should agree. So I struggled. I'm like, I know God's asked me to play this game, and for another time, I'll tell you what what I feel like he's told me. But if I make this statement, baseball's a privilege, it's not a right. I could easily be fired, and I'm okay with that. And
I don't know if it carried as much weight. I think in the Christian world, a lot of people have really appreciated it. And I really just want God to be magnified. And I want people to know they have a voice. And we don't have to bend over and cower down to a mob mentality of like affirm and agree, or pound sand will make your life a living hell. And I just, like, you're making mine really hard to walk in when you're going out of your way to defile, the cornerstone of mine and everybody else's faith who call themselves Christians. Whether you believe he's real or not, it doesn't change the fact. It's like, you can say the sky's yellow all you want, doesn't change the fact that it presents itself as blue. Right. You can argue it and say, well, that's my truth, it's yellow. Okay, well, it still doesn't change the fact. You can say there's no such thing as God. You can say there's no such thing as eternal hell or heaven. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that there is a God, there is a hell and a heaven, and Jesus died so that we could all have joy and be in a heaven with our Creator for eternity. Like, he paid for all of our sins. Like, he just wants us to walk in that. Like, but if you don't want to believe it, that's fine. That's your choice. It doesn't change reality. It doesn't change the fact that up is up and down is down. Man for woman, woman for man. Well,
and you can't expect men and fathers and women of all walks that have a foundation in faith to just accept a level of discrimination that could snowball into something that affects our children and our children's children. For me, Scripture tells us the world's not going to accept Christ. Look, they didn't. They crucified him, an innocent man. Yep. We all have a version of that we have to walk through. But times like this, Christ didn't go to the cross and zip his trap and stop speaking truth. We can suffer and we can carry our cross, but it doesn't mean we're going to do it quietly. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be violent or want revenge.
And we're not called to live and die by the sword.
Not at all. But we're going to speak the truth, period.
There you go.
And if we're ever compelled to not speak the truth, or if we have to face consequences, like look in China right now, people are being murdered. Christians are being murdered for holding Bible studies.
That's persecution.
It's like heavy persecution. And this is the first step to that. When you have an organization, for everyone that's listening, this organization that the Dodgers agreed to have come and put on a performance at their stadium has a history.
I don't think they performed. I think they just were honored as community heroes.
Gotcha. Okay. As community heroes.
Tireless, life-saving work for the last decade or so.
Well, they regularly do a show where they mock the crucifixion pretty morbidly and in a gruesome fashion, in a very tasteless, violent,
you call it what it is.
Hateful.
It's a striptease over somebody dressed like Jesus on a cross.
Right. And that's just something that if my children are at the game and I'm in the dugout like you, and I'm here at my place of work, I'm not going to ever go quietly and say, oh yeah, this is okay. This is something that's okay. I don't feel like that's anyone's, to your point about having to bend over and just tolerate that kind of discrimination. It's one thing to tolerate someone's lifestyle. Of course, we all have our struggles and our obstacles.
Things that I do that are sinful in the eyes of God.
Of course. So we're no better than anyone else. But at the same time, we are
there's still people,
and
God wants them to
absolutely,
be in heaven.
And we love them. I mean, they're God's children. They need help. They need love the most. And so as Christians,
we all need.
That's what we have.
That needs to be portrayed is like me, them, whatever we try to perceive in our own worldly minds, what Christian faith is supposed to look like. We all fall short of the glory of God, and we all need Jesus every single day. It's not like, oh man, like that person really needs Jesus. Like I really need Jesus, because if you sin once, you've sinned all of it. So it's like, my thing is, I just, you pray for anyone who's stuck in something, like whatever it may be, and in this situation, like it's pretty obvious, like what's contrarian towards the word of God, and some of it seems a lot more, boisterous and out there to our eyes.
Right.
And, but like, this is where people try to label Christians as hateful. It's like,
yeah, there probably are some people who are like, I don't want to talk to them. They're sinners. They're going to hell. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not how Christ would handle it. Christ would go up and love them and say, I've called you to greater things. I have. You know,
because we've been touched like that. How many times have you been blessed by something like that, where you're going down a path that might not be good, and you get someone that speaks some truth over you, where you realize, oh, I'm worth more than this, or there's something greater than this, and everyone needs to hear that at the right time.
You made a great point. I think people need to understand how valuable they are.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking that the God of the universe sent his son down, and he was willing to die on a cross for people who he knew would reject him. Like, that's how valuable that our God was willing to give up his only son to like save us. And man, what a great story! If
proof of worth,
these men chose life, rejected lies, and lived for Christ, how many people they could impact. I mean, they're honored for doing community work. I'm sure they've done some good work, you know, but like the root of it all is so like, it's just such a contrast. Like when it's hateful towards our Savior. So I feel like even in the midst of that, like Christ still loves them, you know, and like just, he wants a relationship and to see them in heaven.
Of course.
Like,
and he wants what's best for them.
You know, that there's no such thing as hell, and just do you. Love is love. Like, love was created by God. Love was created by God. Like, nothing is more love than God. So,
and the context of a family. Now that I've seen love in a lot of different forms. Love inside of a family, the way that God literally spells out what he wants for us. A man with his wife and his children, serving them, serving God. Yeah. Love becomes something different in that environment. And a lot of people are living out there without very much love, and they wonder why, and they bury themselves in the vices of the world, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And there's a path to love before you get to the family, the wife and the kids, and that's God. But without God, that love can't exist the way that it's intended to. And I've learned that firsthand. It's not just like some spiritual jargon. It's real. You can't fake that kind of peace and love and fulfillment and gratitude. And that's all that I would ever want for everyone else out there, everyone. And so for you to speak out about your faith and defend Christ, and essentially to the Dodgers, as a really bold move, we were pumped to see that, because we saw all the articles going around, and then Ryan and I, you know, both baseball guys, we saw the article of your statement, and it was very tasteful and professional, and just upholding, that you're going to serve. As for my family, we serve the Lord. That was the sentiment.
Well, and
so for us, it was inspiring.
I also have to give credit. Like, I wrote a very lengthy statement. I talked. The Lord taught me a lot about seeking wise counsel, because it wasn't something about like, it's not like hating the Dodgers. Like, far be it from that. Like, they've been so amazing to me.
Of course.
Just put me in a rock and a hard place, you know, like choosing something that I love so much that God has blessed me with, and then honoring God with my actions and my words. Like, I can't not defend God, you know?
Right.
So, but God taught me seeking wise counsel. Rick Brown, a pastor out of Southern California, I had a few conversations with him through the process, and he just told me, he's like, weigh the cost. Like, if this is what you want to do, you'll have fiery arrows like coming at you like crazy. He's like, weigh the cost. And I thought about that, and I was like, weigh the cost. Like, Jesus paid it all. Like, how could I not end up for his glory or for his honor? And then he connected me with a faith and freedom lawyer, Matt Staver. He's the gentleman who represented the high school coach who knelt at the 50-yard line.
Oh, cool.
And we took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and he's won a few cases at the Supreme Court level. So he's the one that actually took my words and typed them up into a more legible version, and not like, because I didn't want my words to get ahead of God's will, and I wanted my words to. And so he talked to me. He
put into words what he knew my feelings were based on my words I'd written, and gave me a more like eloquent version, you know?
Yeah.
So I want to give a thank you to Matt Staver and Rick Brown, and even Sean Foyt, because Sean Foyt has become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years since COVID. We started following his ministry, Let Us Worship, which I don't know if you've heard of, but he's doing a capital tour right now.
Oh, cool.
Taking praise and worship and casting down strongholds in every capital and trying to win back for the kingdom of God.
Unreal. What's the name of the ministry?
Let Us Worship.
Let Us Worship. And what's his name again?
Sean Foyt.
Sean Foyt. Let Us Worship. Yeah.
SEAN. So he's a CN.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to get him on too at some point.
Yeah, well, he's a good dude. And Foyt, I think it's FEUCHT or UE. It's either EU or UE. I don't want to mess that up. I think it's EU.
Yeah. Well, hey, so as we start to wrap up here, I want to make sure that one thought that I had just now with what you just went through with the Dodgers, your story from literal rags to where you are now, the bullying you had to deal with that really weighed heavily on your whole life. It wasn't just baseball or the locker room.
Yeah, we didn't touch on it a lot, but it was a big deal.
It's a big deal. And I know that, and knowing you. And the big point about this too is what you stood up to is a form of bullying. I mean, you're watching your Lord and Savior be bullied in a sense.
I never thought of it that way.
You know, and so maybe that is part of why you have the conviction to stand up, because somebody that hasn't been a victim of bullying like that may not understand or have the motivation to stand up. So I think what you've been through was for a reason, and it primed you to be the kind of person that will stand up. And we were all really proud of you, man.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hass. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Quick note on bullying. I don't condone it in any way. But I do think that when you go through something, it's not about what is said or done to you. Some of it can be pretty bad, like physically. But verbally, I think it can be hurtful, but it's like, how do you respond? If you know who your identity is in Christ, like there's nothing someone can say, because even the nicest people in your life, your mom, your dad, your spouse, they will let you down. They will fall short of expectations and they will let you down. So when you realize who you are in Christ, those words, they hurt in the moment, but they sculpt you for something greater when you get older. And I've seen that in my life. Sitting in a stadium of 40 to 60,000 people, and in a given moment, someone's dropping, words that can be spoken on air, nor should they ever be spoken, and calling you everything under the sun. It's like,
heckling's an understatement.
I mean, cool, dude. Like, like if I wanted to chirp back, I'd be like, hey, thanks for my salary. I mean, you're paying it right now, but it's just like, I welcome razzing. Like, that's part of sports, but just don't make it personal. Kids are there. You can call me whatever you want. I really don't care. It doesn't change my identity and who I am. What I care is how you're sculpting the next generation.
Yeah, what you're teaching them. It's less about you and your feelings.
So it's like,
and more about acceptable norms. That's not an acceptable norm. We shouldn't be okay with screaming obscenities at somebody right in front of the children. Just culturally, the traditional values, I think, are slipping, and it's fair. But at the same time, look at Jesus.
I think we're seeing a turnaround, though. We're kind of seeing it.
We are
almost like a Haman's Noose type thing. Like, where they're trying to like force us down something so hard that people are like, wait, this is wrong. Like, it's so aggressive. People are like, you know what? Now that seems a little messed up.
Right. Where they're like looking at lowering the legal age of consent for sex. And you're like, wait a second. Who's pushing for this? Who's pushing for the 14?
For another conversation.
But with all that in mind, because we only have a couple minutes, I think what you've shared today with your testimony is massively powerful. I hope it's inspired some people. And there's a lot more to discuss from a fatherhood perspective. We'll have to maybe do another podcast episode here in a couple months and dive into that too, because you're a father of 4, right?
No? 3. Technically 5. You want to count my 2 Dalmatians, but
there you go. 3. Okay.
2 girls and a boy. Oldest is a girl, middle is a son, and then a daughter at the bottom there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we both have 3 kids. There's a lot to talk about with what's going on in the world, how your faith can shape your parenting. There's a lot of fathers and mothers that listen to this show. And so that's one area of perspective that I think you have a lot of wisdom in, and would love to dive into that more next time. Yeah.
Hey, you're just sprinkling me with kindness right now.
Well, no, man. I mean,
you need to have my wife on the show because she's the one who knows how to handle all this stuff.
Yeah, dude. Hey,
I'm the wound up one when it comes to things. Katie's the voice of reason. So,
but you knew what you needed to do to find a wife that had what it takes.
God knew.
Yeah, God knew.
God knew
That's
that.
right.
In the moment, I was pretty laid back, and as we've gotten older, I see, my kids are riding their bike really fast down our driveway, and I'm like, they're going to face plant. That's a dental program. Katie's like, oh, they'll learn. I was like, yeah, but this is going to be like a 3-month recovery.
It's tough.
So I'm trying to you gotta let them fail, and that's where she's really good at pushing me. It's like learning to let them fail, but also knowing when to step in for their health.
And it's the faith thing. I mean, we talked about this some, but I lost my dad when I was young, and so with my kids, when I go on adventures like what you're talking about to the lake when you went through the storm,
that's in the back of your mind.
Well, in the back of my mind, there's this deep rooted trauma of fear where it's like, oh my God, I cannot leave my kids.
Yeah.
At this age, that's when I lost my dad, and it was like a massive void. It still is. And so for my kids, but to let go of that is important, and to say, look, God still took
that we control our own outcome of
exactly.
Life. If God, that's very interesting.
God took care of me throughout all that.
God wants me to have a long life with my kids. It doesn't matter what I do. My angels are just going to have a heck of a party protecting me.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, wow,
that's right.
Kind of sitting at home playing on your computer all day. Why don't you challenge me with something?
Yeah, totally.
Down Niagara Falls.
Yeah, exactly. Heli skiing.
Make your angels sweat a little bit with excitement. Yeah.
Well, and that's where I'm at. It's like we can't control the next second of our life, much less the future and what happens to our kids, what they go through. It's just, you just have to have faith and be there for them and be ready to take them to the dentist when you need to, and celebrate their learning experience as best you can. It's a journey for sure, but
yeah, absolutely.
Hey, at least we're both on it.
Well, this has been great, dude.
You realize awesome.
We've been talking for like 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. And these are supposed to be 1.5 hours.
Huh?
These are supposed to be 1.5 hour interviews. And so this has just gone. But it's awesome. How awesome is that? Yeah. We'll Venmo you.
You put 2 Blakes on a podcast, and you're doubling time.
And I'm serious about having you on again, because I think diving into parenting would be another really valuable piece now that the audience has gotten to know you a little bit. So,
hopefully for the better.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course for the better. You're a shining example. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate just what I've learned from you, over the years. You've always had a walk that similar to Ryan that has been inspiring, and just keep doing that, man. Keep doing that. We'll be praying for you, all of us, that you're coming back to health, that you come back better than ever. And you can make those offerings up to God in the way that you were built to.
Oh, I miss playing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. Hey.
Does Pineda still have the Veloster?
Oh, the Veloster, the Hyundai Veloster. No, that thing didn't make it 2 weeks, I think, before he sold it.
Oh,
sold it for more money. He's been flipping everything he's bought for his whole life. So
financial guru.
Yeah, financial guru. But I'll definitely say,
tell him hi for me.
I will. I'll tell him hi for you. Yeah. And we'll have to have you in person. Come back by the studio next time. I know it's really close, Vegas and LA. So when you're in LA, it'd be awesome to just pop over.
I'm in Phoenix right now, so.
Oh, there you go. Awesome.
It's actually,
we love it down there.
About the same distance, probably.
Yeah, about a 45-minute flight.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Quick and easy. I get it. You're throwing subtle hints like it's not hard, Blake. Get over here.
Yeah. I mean, this virtual is fine if you don't want to see me, but whatever. No, it's been great seeing you and catching up with you, man. Anything before we hop off that, like last little things that we missed that you might want to add in?
Not that I can think of. I feel like I should have some like
no sponsors to thank.
Oh yeah, I got one.
Lost water.
Hey, Tacoma Golf. If you watch this,
there you go.
I randomly discovered your irons, and I need some help. So
Tacoma Golf. Let's go.
My marketing guy reached out to you today via Instagram and email. So let me know what's best and what kind of deal we got. So
nobody ghosts the train. So get back to him.
I don't know how many people know Tacoma Golf. Takomo.
Takomo. Japanese company?
No. I don't think so. I think they told me it's from Finland.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'll check them out.
I'll finish.
We're all into golf out here, so we'll have to have you out to Southern Highlands. It's a heck of a course out here in Vegas. You'd love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, my financial guy's there, so maybe we can all link up and play.
Let's go. Yeah, we'll link up on the links. And
I'm all about dad jokes. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's
you might want to cut this last little part off your interview.
No, this is great. It's what it's all about, man. I appreciate you coming and showing a bit of your life to all the people that may not know it. And, hopefully we can just help to continue to share your story and inspire folks. And, you'll be the Tim Tebow of baseball.
Hey, Tim's an amazing man.
He is.
He's been on top of this
from the start. He's been doing it since I thought he was a weirdo. Back when I was out of my kind of walk living in the world, and I was like, he's a weirdo.
I never thought he was a weirdo. I viewed him as like a superhero to me.
But he's not a weirdo. He never was. I was a weirdo for thinking that he was, just trying to get attention. That's what I thought. But it wasn't that.
What
it's faith.
Compels you when you find the true love of Christ and you find love for yourself.
Right.
You understand the love that Christ has for you. I think you're compelled to just honor him because you understand how much you've been forgiven. I mean, it's
exactly.
Just great.
And to share and to accept, hey, some people aren't going to understand it, and that's okay. Some people are going to think I'm weird. That's okay. And that's where I'm at now, finally, where it's like, look, it's not about being cool and being understood. It's about, sharing the truth and the gospel and the good news, and it's real. So pumped to be on the same mission with you, brother. Thanks for being on.
Let's ride. Let's go.
All right, Trein. Thanks for being on. We'll see you soon.